Was Jesus dependent or independent?
He's independent.
He's independent?
Yes.
Okay. So my definition of dependency was something that relies on something else for its existence.
Yeah, you said something that relies on another being, right?
It can be any other way, and it's not composed of pieces.
So, right. So
Jesus is all three of those.
No. So when you said dependence, right?
Yes.
Dependence is relying on something outside of your being, right?
No, it depends on your dependence requires on something else for its
When you say
existence.
something else,
For example, I need water, I need to sleep, the planet needs the sun to be a perfect distance so we don't freeze to death, the sun has its orbit.
let's try to make sure. Okay, so the sun relies on something outside of its own being for its existence,
Not
right?
being. It requires something else to survive.
That's outside of its being.
Yes.
That's outside of its
No,
being.
when you say being, what do you mean by that?
A being is its ontology, what it is, its existence.
It
So
requires something else.
something else that exists gives itself existence. So another being.
Which is the fastest growing.
No, brother, one second. Brother, that's please. Let's explore this Christianity.
So just to solidify,
Yes.
so dependency is something that relies on another being for its existence, or
on another thing for its existence.
Can we solidify on being? So would you say that the thing is another
I don't
being?
require a water is not a being. I
You said
require
what?
water. I need
Water is a being. So being is just is a state of existence. It has ontology.
If that's your definition of being, then yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right, cool. So dependency, you rely on another being for your existence.
Yes.
All right, let's go.
No, that's my argument. So you
Okay.
said that Jesus is independent.
Yeah, he's independent.
Okay, that is not independency.
Okay.
Because Jesus is number one. Jesus could be any other way.
He could be any other way.
What did Jesus look like?
I don't know.
Is there anything other?
You talking about his human nature?
Yes.
Well, we're talking about his divine nature.
No, I'm talking about his human nature. What did he look like?
I don't know.
In John 1:14, when it says the Word became flesh, the original Greek uses the phrase ho logos, sarx, egeneto. The word egeneto does not imply that the Word changed his essence into something else. Rather, it means that the Word took on a new mode of existence. He assumed human nature. He never ceased to be the eternal Word. He remained fully divine, but now he was also truly human. The incarnation is not subtraction, but addition, not the replacement of one nature with another, but the embodiment of divine love in a form that can be touched and experienced by creation. And within this sacred mystery, we discover a profound truth. The person of Jesus, the eternal Word, is not dependent on the body he took on. His being does not come from the flesh. It is the flesh that comes from him. He remains completely independent in his divinity, uncreated, untouched by time, and never defined by anything temporary. When he became man, it wasn't because he needed a body in order to be God. It was purely out of love that he took on flesh, so that we who are mortal might come to know the eternal. This is not a story of God transforming into a man. It is the story of God assuming human nature without losing even a trace of his divinity. The Word did not become man out of necessity or limitation, but by his free, sovereign will, driven by eternal love. The person of the Word remains undivided and whole, not dependent on the creation he entered, but instead creating a way for creation to be restored through him. The incarnation, then, is the moment where the independent one willingly descended into human dependence, not because he lacked anything, but to show us that God is not distant. The Word became flesh, not by changing what he was, but by adding humanity to his perfect divinity, revealing that the one who is never bound now lives among the broken, so that the broken may be brought into the unshakable life of God.
Talking about his human nature?
Yes.
Well, we're talking about his divine nature.
No, I'm talking about his human nature. What did he look like?
I don't know.
Did he have two arms?
Yes, he did.
Could he have been born with no arm?
Possibly.
Yeah, okay, so he can be any other way, so he's dependent.
But you're talking about his human nature versus his divine nature.
No, I'm not talking about human nature.
Okay, so
I'm saying Jesus.
I would agree that the human nature is dependent. I would agree.
Okay, no,
but
if it's dependent, then you cannot have an infinite regress of dependent things. It has to depend on something that's independent.
Yeah.
So, what is the independent thing?
Jesus' divine nature. Because Jesus, let me finish. Let me answer in full. Okay. Because Jesus has a divine nature, he has a nature that is independent. Okay?
You can't be dependent and independent at the same time.
Yeah, well, I agree that you can't be dependent and independent at the same time in the same sense.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. Jesus is independent in regards to his divine nature, dependent in regards to his human nature.
But my argument is the following. I told you there are three types of existence.
We
Impossible
eliminated
existence,
one of them.
triangle, square. If I'll give you a little recap there, let's say this, because the triangle and square are distinct.
Right.
the triangle has 3 sides, the square has 4 sides.
Yep.
So the triangle, let's name the triangle Jesus, and let's name the square the Father.
No. Let's do
Yeah,
let's name the triangle flesh and name the square divine.
No, because you know why? Because there are 2 separate opposite beings.
Let me
finish. Because you know where this is going. Now, yes, I'll be laughing if I was you too. I'll be laughing if I was you too. You know when the nerves come up, you gotta release it one. How about that? It's either by farting or laughing.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
So
right.
now, guys, the triangle and square are 2 opposites. So I said an impossible existence is what? To have a triangle square, they're impossible. It's just the same way of saying as dependent, independent.
Okay.
2 opposites, black, white.
Nice.
So now, and then I said there are dependent things like myself. I depend on water, sleep, shelter, food, and many other things to survive. I asked the question: is Jesus dependent or independent? He said he's independent. I said to him, no, because Jesus, when he was born, could have been born with one arm missing. He said yes. That shows he's composed of pieces. He could be any other way, and he's dependent.
Okay.
And I said it depends on why he goes. It depends on his independence.
No, can I respond to this? All right, thank you. So you're conflating categories. So when you ask me, is Jesus dependent or independent? I said independent. That's in regards to his divine nature. He's the dependency, the human nature is dependent. Okay, it's composite, of course. Now you said that this is like doing
Does this belong to you?
Yeah, that's me. You said that this is like doing a squared circle. Now let me ask you this, because I agree with you that a square and a circle cannot be
Triangle square.
a triangle square. Sorry. A triangle square cannot be the same thing, right? Now let me ask you this: can a triangle and a square be put next to each other?
Yeah.
Okay, is that a contradiction?
No.
Okay, so I'm not saying that the divine nature and the human nature are intertwined and mixed and are the same exact thing. I'm saying that they're next to each other. They're united in the person of Jesus.
Next to
Okay?
no. When you
Yes,
make them
they're
next
united.
when you mix them next to each other, unite them as one force of the triangle.
they're not
square.
mixed.
That's why I said it's an impossible existence, because you can't have triangle square.
That's what I'm saying. That's not a triangle square. They're next to each other. I have a triangle and I have a square.
No, but what
and
you've
they're
done
next
is,
to each
it
other.
looks like a house. It's like a square and a triangle. It's like a little house, isn't it? Yeah. But it doesn't work here because the house just fell apart. You know why? Because I'm saying, can you have a triangle square? He's saying no. When you put the triangle and square together, if you look at it, guys, it looks like a little house here. But your argument of houses fell apart. I'm saying the following: because you're saying, can you have a square and triangle put together? I said yes, and it doesn't contradict. I said, can you have a triangle square?
Right, and I say no, right? So look, notice, let's get on the same page, okay? You and I both agree that you cannot have a triangle and a square in the same way, in the same sense, okay? We agree.
What does that remind you? Once I say that again.
Hold on a second.
No, say
You
that
can't-
again. Say that again.
I'll say it again, sure, for the audience.
Yeah.
You cannot have a triangle and a square in the same way, in the same sense.
Wow.
So understand.
Only just Jesus and the Father.
Wait, hold on.
Night.
Ali Dawa, follow what I'm saying. Follow what I'm saying, okay? What I'm saying
following, but
is,
you're going astray.
let's see. What I'm saying is that we have a triangle and we have a square next to each other, united. Not that they're mixed, not that they're combined, they're united in the person, okay? So I'm not saying that Jesus is independent and dependent in the same exact way, in the same sense. That would be a contradiction. I'm saying that he has a nature that is independent and a nature that is dependent. 2 different natures united in the person. That's called the hypostatic union. This is Christian theology.
In the tradition of the early church fathers, the mystery of the incarnation, how the Word of God became man, is not understood as a fusion or alteration of essence, but as a deep and inseparable union between 2 distinct natures, divine and human. This union is known as the hypostatic union, the joining of 2 natures in one hypostasis, one person, without mixture, without change, without division, and without separation. To illustrate this mystery, the fathers used a vivid and meaningful analogy: iron and fire. When a piece of iron is placed in the heart of a flame, it begins to glow red hot. It becomes radiant, full of heat, even capable of setting other things ablaze. Yet despite being completely infused with fire, the iron does not lose its nature, nor does the fire become iron. Each remains what it is, but now they are united, completely, functionally, and visibly, not by blending into a new substance, but by perfect participation. In that glowing metal, we see the energy of the fire without any confusion of essence. Likewise, the Church Fathers taught that in the person of Jesus Christ, the human nature does not overwhelm or absorb the divine, and the divine does not annihilate the human. Both remain whole and intact, yet are perfectly united in a single person. This is the heart of their teaching. Christ is not half God and half man, nor is he God transformed into man. He is fully God and fully man, one undivided person, 2 unconfused natures. This understanding arises from the deep conviction that unless God truly took on human nature, there could be no true redemption. As Gregory of Nazianzus declared, what is not assumed is not healed. Christ had to take on the entirety of human nature, though without sin, so that the nature corrupted by sin could be restored through this perfect union. And in taking on humanity, he lost nothing of his divinity. The incarnation, then, is not a result of need or deficiency, but a free act of divine humility and love. The Word did not become man because he required a body, but because he desired that mortal, limited humanity might come to know and be united with the eternal. Salvation becomes possible not because human nature is transformed into divinity, but because God stooped down to embrace human nature and lift it up. From the perspective of the Fathers, the incarnation is not a mixture, but a union without confusion, not a transformation, but a pure assumption. This is why they were careful to guard both the full divinity and full humanity of Christ. For if Christ were not truly God, he could not save us. And if he were not truly man, he could not take our place. In the person of Jesus Christ, the infinite reaches out to the finite. The unchanging one steps into history. The eternal enters time, not because he needed to, but because his love overflowed for a fallen world. The incarnation becomes the moment when the one who is utterly independent willingly bears our limitations, so that we who are fragile might be healed and brought back into fellowship with the source of life.